Hello and welcome to the latest of our UK to Global series, where we're providing information for UK business leaders to support their overseas expansion needs. And I'm delighted to be joined by Eileen Turcott, our regional leader for Latin America, as we go back and explore what's happening in South and Central America. Hi Eileen, how are you doing?
Hi, Simon. It's good to be here again. Thanks for taking the time to talk about our region. Lots going on, a lot of exciting developments and opportunities.
Sure is. Now, last time we got together to talk about Latin America, we were still in the throes of COVID, but so much has happened since then. Um, Clearly, COVID's still going on, but we've had the terrible situation in Ukraine with the Russian invasion. That's had an impact on Latin America, and we can talk about that. We've also got the recessionary headwinds that are happening to many economies around the globe, not least in your region, with inflationary increases and interest rates increases from central banks. So, there's so many kind of macro geopolitical things that have happened. But why don't we just start back with COVID? Where are we? Where is the region with COVID generally in a nutshell?
Generally, the in 2021 region had a major rebound. In 2020, the regional economy contracted 7%, and then 2021 it rebounded 6.8%. So there was a significant rebound, and projections were really good at the beginning of 2022. But again, the conflict, the war in Ukraine has dampened projections. Inflation has really been a massive impediment to growth and to confidence in the growth projections. So I think we've seen less optimism as the year has gone on, as opposed to where we started. But from a pandemic perspective, economies and markets are open. Travel is resuming. Businesses and just daily life is returning to normal, I would say. But economically, there's still some massive impacts, and the governments of these countries spent a lot of money in COVID relief, and now there's a lot of tax reform happening to try to figure out how to pay for that expenditure during the pandemic, and the recession is also a concern.
Well, let's talk about that recession because, I mean, a number of central banks have increased interest rates quite markedly in the last few weeks and months. Um, the region has always had a reputation of high inflationary and high interest rate regimes. So this isn't going to abate that at all. Uh, are there any other stimulus packages that are being made available to attract international investment into the region whilst all of these recessionary pressures are there?
Actually, it's interesting that you say that, because I think the UK is one of the locations that is, or one of the areas where the government is actually incentivizing investment through its sustainable infrastructure plans. There's money being invested into Latin America in the area of infrastructure to try to take an opportunity to set it on the right path for sustainability and
Hmm.
and to improve not just improve the infrastructure overall, but to set it on a path for a more sustainable future. And the UK, I think Peru, Mexico, and Colombia are recipients of some of the UK investment in this SIP program, which I think is a big opportunity. But the trend of the first quarter in 2022 was significant investment in private capital investment. Private equity was up double digits, 190 transactions in the first 3 months of 2022, and a big percentage of that was in fintech, by far the largest sector of investment. So whether it's a stimulus package or just capital or private equity
Yeah.
and corporations looking for alternative markets, I think Latin America is well positioned to continue to receive that foreign investment.
We talked about that in our previous video, which is still on the website if you'd like to go and have a look at that. But we were talking about some of the major sectors in the region being the likes of fintech, and the attraction of inbound money into those sectors, but also infrastructure investments, as you mentioned, construction. That the region has a very young, relatively young, well-educated demographic consumer market aspect there. So there are a number of interesting angles, aren't there, for
Yeah.
for UK businesses to look at, and it was interesting when we spoke previously. And I wonder if this is still the same. I asked you, what's the kind of one piece of advice you would give a UK business leader, and you said do your homework.
Mhm.
Is that still the case, and what do you mean by that?
I mean, it's still the case in terms of do your homework and just set expectations in terms of timing and process. I think it's still the case that, like I mentioned, the pandemic has created a need for a lot of tax reform. So the ground is shifting in many cases, and so there are tax changes and policy changes. There's been we've had a number of elections over the since we last spoke in a few months ago. There have been 3 major elections in major markets in the region, in Peru, Chile, and Colombia. Each of those represented a regime change from right government to leftist government. So there's changes happening.
And Brazil's happening, I think, in October. So
October, it's a big. All eyes are on October for this election. It's pretty. 70% of the vote is more or less or is concentrated in the 2 candidates, Lula and Bolsonaro, who's the current president, and that is, all eyes are on there because it could be that for the first time in the history of the region, we have the 6 largest markets in the region with further left governments, and that's it's we're not opining on politics, but I will say that like we talked about in our last video, there is a young electorate. Some of these leaders in Chile, for example, their new president, Gabriel Boric, is 36 years old. He's a student activist. So there's an engaged young electorate, and the leaders are promoting, social campaigns around social diversity, human rights. In Colombia, Gustavo Petro is their new president. He ran on a platform really emphasizing the global fight on climate change, protecting ecodiversity in the region. So we'll see a lot of opportunity in this ESG space. It's just sustainability, the green bond audits and carbon footprint analysis, things that are related to what's important to the people in our region.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think this is certainly one to keep an eye on. I think when we when we come back, Eileen, why don't we expand on that? It's sustainability and ESG piece, and actually we'll see where perhaps some of the government policies, the new government policies, are beginning to come in, and that will give some additional insight. But I think whistle stop tour there, COVID, the supply chain issues, recessionary issues, some geopolitical macro policy issues. But it's an expanding market. There's a lot of opportunities. Do your homework, I think, is still the message.
Yeah, definitely do your homework and be prepared for it to take longer than expected. But hopefully we see optimism improving. I know that there's a lot of excitement around, particularly with the UK, and this should be good news to both UK and Mexican clients and companies, because the negotiations that started in July around the free trade agreement that's in discussion between the Mexican and UK government, that would be a massive development. And would really expand and explode the trade opportunities between those 2 very important markets.
Sure would. Okay, Ellen, let's leave it there. And as ever, if you need any more information in terms of your UK to global expansion plans, please feel free to get in touch. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks.